We have some time for questions or comments. Just where's the microphone? And your glasses. Comments or questions about the different cultural settings or about literacy projects in different cultures in general or anything? And then Sophia. Great.
So I would like to raise a controversial issue. I think I heard it in your presentation, but I know that most people here will disagree with me, so it's a good way to start a conversation. But all through this seminar, there has been a focus on reading for enjoyment. But I'd like to just bring up another example. My husband of 47 years, who I adore, but he doesn't read for enjoyment. I can't get him ever to read for enjoyment. He reads because he's needs to, that it's useful to him. He's a professor, he's been a professor at MIT and Harvard, so he's obviously very literate, but most of his reading is for informational purposes. He reads because it is the key to getting something done. Now, what I've heard most at this conference is about enjoyment. And I would propose that there are some children who will never enjoy reading, but they will need it, regardless of whether they enjoy it. In other words, they cannot be proficient or not get a job unless they can use reading for real life purposes. So my point is, or my question is that to some extent, I feel our emphasis on enjoyment is not the right emphasis. It's an emphasis, what we should begin to talk a little bit about is this is the key to so many purposeful activities that you may want to find out about.
I think it's a fabulous question. Sorry, fabulous question. Yeah. Fabulous, exactly. Right. I think it's so fabulous that we might want to start commenting it now, but maybe elaborate on it in our last session, which is meant for the larger questions. So I invite people either to comment on this or to comment on larger questions, and at any way, keep in mind this question for our last session. Okay? So
I thought last session will go to different questions. Okay.
Okay.
טוב, אני קודם כל מסכימה מאוד עם... רגע, אני מחכה שהיא תעשה. אני אומרת שאני מסכימה מאוד עם סוזן, ושבאמת לקריאה, יש כמה מטרות, וזה לא רק מטרה בשביל הנאה, יש כמה מטרות לקריאה. זה גם בשביל מידע, גם בשביל להתקדם, גם בשביל לדעת יותר על מה שקורה בעולם. זה לא רק בשביל הנאה, וזה נכון. אני רוצה עכשיו להתייחס להרצאה של פרופסור פטריק, נקטריוס. שהוא דיבר, אני ממש הזדהיתי, כי אני הרגשתי שזה תואם לחברה הערבית, לחברה שלנו. יש מסורת, זה קצת מסורתי, אבל גם מודרני. אבל השאלה שלי אליך, האם זה בגלל המצב הכלכלי שנמצאת בו הארץ, בגלל זה המצב זה ככה? האם מצאתם הבדלים בין ילדים ממצב סוציו-אקונומי גבוה למצב סוציו-אקונומי נמוך אצלכם? ומה קורה עם הכשרת גננות אצלכם? למה זה כל כך ממוקדות באלפביתיות?
Just a comment on the first question. As a father of two boys, I know that my children, at least, read informational book very much. At growing up more than narrative books, but they do that as a part of enjoyment. They would like to learn about Egypt. We have, with both, we have passed the Egyptian period, the dinosaur period, the Roman Empire period, the astronomy period. So we have, at least these topics, they have covered both. But it has nothing to do with, they don't like stories about stars. They want about planets, stars, sun, the solar system, and things like that. But this is enjoyment for them. We don't say them that it will be very useful in 4th grade to have some background knowledge about solar system, so please write that. No. They want that because they want to learn the world around them. Now to the second question. So I think that it's enjoyment also. The second question. There is a difference between socio-economic status in Greece because now, for example, it is very difficult for a low media class, if this exists in Greece anymore, to spend money for books, but this is the case for high class people. Now, our teachers stress the letter issue because they don't know what exactly literacy means. They say literacy, letter, okay, let's learn the letters, and they feel more comfortable and they can organize activities with all these children. It's much easier for them. For me, for example, I adapt a kindergarten every year, and I am going 1 day per week, and I spend my morning in the kindergarten. So children know me as a teacher, parents understand what I am doing, that I am part of the life of this classroom, but when I am reading, I want 5 or 6 children in my table, or when we are sitting down. Because with this number, I can see the children, I can touch the children, so if there is some movement or something, I can do that and not interrupt my reading. I can hear the children, and we can have a loud discussion, and all people participate. The kindergarten teacher is really angry with me, because you say, you have the luxury to do whatever you want. But I have not this luxury. This is why my students have a lot of books on PowerPoint presentations, because they cannot read a book with 25 children like this. I cannot see the picture. Okay, look, and then. Or what do you see in this picture? So we have these PowerPoint presentations. We have also some movie maker, so they can press the button and go in small groups. The children can do that. But yes, the perspectives of our kindergarten children, generally speaking, is very traditional. And this is due to the lack of professional development seminars or workshops.
Thank you.
Just one.
A small remark that as adult, I think every one of us reading a lot as functional reading, meaning, you know, promote our job and what we are do daily. And the lucky among us, they enjoy this and feel fulfillment from his work and reading enjoyable. But I think it's very, I heard it from many friends of mine, foreigners, that when they come, a lot of people working with the UN and they come and live in Israel, they always say to me, wow, how Israel is
is taking care of the children, and there's many facilities and activities for children, so they enjoy all the time. I think the enjoyable aspect of reading that we emphasize, all of us, it's something cultural maybe, but also as educator, I believe that meaningful learning for all the kids from early child, and I'm dealing more with youth and junior students, meaningful learning, it should be with experimental, of enjoyable learning, and if I can succeed to let the children read and read more with joy, it's a great achievement. So I in favor of enjoyable reading. I don't know if you meant that, but it's very important element. I think we have to keep it.
It's good that you started off by saying you think people are going to disagree with you, so then I don't feel so bad if I disagree with you. I don't really disagree with you. I think, however, that especially when we focus on very young children, the aim is to focus on pleasurable activities in the hopes that later on their engagement will be one that is more facilitative or easier for them, because these are, we have to, and it doesn't have to be a book, we all have to read journal articles. Those don't necessarily give me pleasure the way a novel gives me pleasure, but if you set children off on the path of enjoyment from the written word, I guess the hope is that later they'll be more willing to engage with it. And that's on all levels, whether for pleasure or for knowledge, which, has to come later on anyway. So I didn't really disagree.
אני רוצה לשתף דווקא בהקשר הזה של... אוקיי. אני רוצה לשתף דווקא באמת בחוויה אישית שלי. יש לי בת ובן, שהבחורה, אני מבקשת כל הזמן מהם לקרוא. עכשיו, הבן שלי הוא בכיתה ד', והוא לא יכול לישון בלי לקרוא, והוא קורא ספרים של 100 עמודים, והוא נהנה, וגם ספרים אינפורמטיביים על החלל והדינוזאורים, והוא מאוד נהנה מזה. עכשיו, הבת שלי השנייה, אני מבקשת ממנה, היא בכיתה ו', אני מבקשת ממנה לקרוא ולנסות. אז היא אומרת לי ומשיבה לי, תשמעי, בבית ספר כל הזמן מלמדים אותנו, אני לא רוצה לקרוא. אז פה העניין של למידה משמעותית, והעניין של חוויית הקריאה, ואני חושבת גם ההתערבות המוקדמת. הבן שלי חווה התערבות מוקדמת, מושכלת, וחווייתית של הקריאה, ואני רואה שהוא נהנה מזה יותר. הילדה הבכורה שלי, שנתיים יותר מבוגרת ממנו, אני זוכרת שאני גם לא הייתי כל כך משכילה בעניין של הקריאה, ואני זוכרת שקראתי ספרים יותר בספרותית, ולא עשיתי את התיווך, ולא עשיתי את השיחה, ופתאום נפל לי אסימון בגלל הקריאה שלה, שפתאום זה תחום ממש שמעניין לחקור, וככה הפנייה שלי הייתה. אז אני חושבת ויש לי ילדה שלישית, שהיא בת 5, שהיא לא יכולה לישון בלי קריאת ספרים. היא שולטת, אני יכולה לנהל איתה שיחה בספרותית, בצורה מאוד טובה וממש... ורואים את ההבדל, והיא יכולה גם לנהל שיחה וגם להסיק מספר ולקשר לחיי היום יום. ורואים את ההבדל בין שלושת הילדים, גם בצורת ההתערבות וגם רואים את זה אחר כך.
I'd like to share with you also a personal story. I think there are ups and downs. My son is older than some of these others, but I can identify with the dinosaurs and all this type of thing. And obviously, there was a lot of reading to him and pleasurable moments with that. However, there came a time when he was about 13 years old, something like that, in which I didn't see him reading at all. And at that time, I live in a little village near Jerusalem. We have a library. In those days, we didn't have a paid librarian, and I was one of those who volunteered for several years as the librarian. And I tried to think, what can I do to make my child understand how important it is? What will he respond to? So one day I said to him, there are a lot of fellows here in this village who, before they go to the Army Reserves, they come to the library to check out a book to take with them. So I wanted him to feel somebody who's really like a hero. He reads. That's something important. It didn't so much work. He took here and there. And then it turned out that what he really liked reading, which I'm ashamed to say at that time, were comics. And we didn't have comics in our library, so I took him to the library in our Multi-Lingual in Jerusalem, where for years I was the story lady. I did the English story hour for preschool children. And I went in and he looked around and there was nothing, he just didn't want to be there. And I didn't know where to hide myself from embarrassment because all of the librarians knew me as the story lady. And here was my son who didn't even want to look at the shelves. Okay, so we left. We came back after about a month or two, and he checked out a book of comics. They had comics. And he liked it, so he brought it back, and he checked out another book. And so this went on each week until he had read all the comics on the shelf. By then, he had gotten used to coming to the library, and he didn't know what to choose because he finished the comics. So he looked around. He chose a book by Jules Verne. Jules Verne, I don't know. And he liked it, so he read all the Jules Verne on the shelf. And then he took a book by James Fenimore Cooper, and he read all the James Fenimore Cooper on the shelf. And then he took out Tolkien, and he read all the Tolkien on the shelf. At any rate, it worked until at some point, and he read and read and read, and then some point it went down again. And before, when he now today is a lawyer, but when he went for an interview, one of the questions that at this law firm, one of the partners asked him, what books do you read? And what was the most recent book you read? And he was so shocked. I think it was Tom Clancy or something. Okay, I won't go on and on, but my experience is that there's an up and down kind of thing, and hopefully somewhere along the line our children will read.
So we are toward the end of our seminar, and our seminar was about promoting reading with preschool children in disadvantaged communities. And what I want to think about is that there are the universal issues, and there are the more culture-specific issues. So when, for example, Mabsam and Muna said to me, listen, in the Arab society, it is less common to speak about feelings and about beliefs, and that children have to be behave okay with their children. Or when Yara talked about the Ethiopian community and said, well, in this community, children are not supposed to look at their parents, and parents, and in our country now, there is such a problem because they speak Hebrew and they kind of neglect all their tradition. And now when we hear about what Nektarios says about Greece, what I want us to pay attention is that when we look, we have to look at the universal aspects, but we have also to look at the culture-specific aspects and see how we also accommodate and look for, okay, we are doing the universal things, but we're also going to look at the specific things for the culture, and we are going to go and help in that domain.
Can I just add one little addendum to that? I'd like to add one just addendum, because I think your point, Dwairy, is so important. But I ask us all to not look so specifically with our ideological perspective. We are here because we're highly literate. We are book readers. I bet every single one of us are. And so when we think about these multiple cultures, we have to think about what brings them to the book. And in some cases, it might not be enjoyment. In some cases, it might be to get things done. All I'm suggesting is there are multiple perspectives.
This is just a brief comment question, and I don't expect an answer. One of the values of this experience is to broaden everyone's horizons, and certainly one of the ways that my eyes have been opened or horizons broadened has been the concern with looking at using books as a way of looking at values and conversations around values. And so I just want to acknowledge that I found that very interesting, and to ask just a question that or a suggestion that people might want to look at further. In my research, when I look at trying to change how teachers use vocabulary or language, it's very hard to get teachers to generalize their use from one setting to other settings. And however, I wonder, I listened to Rotem's analysis of it looked like the use of emotional language had a sort of extension, had power. And when I heard that, I wonder if those mothers also do it at other times of the day. And then when I heard your presentation, I sort of turned it around the other way. I wonder if the experience of reading books and being encouraged to engage in those kinds of conversations about feelings and values might generalize. They could take that to other times of the day. It might be that you could have kinds of effects that go beyond the book reading experience, and that kind of a topic of conversation might be more easily taken to other settings than these language things that are hard.
Thank you. Last but not least. Okay. It's your point was, I think it's very interesting. Actually, I have a research that was done with book reading and photo album watching of parents, which are two contexts, and there is a discourse. And it was, maybe not surprisingly, parents did the same mediation at the same level of mediation in these both contexts. Yes, so there is relationship as far as, and I think that Dorit also did something. So there. It was different. Yeah, it was different in your case. So maybe there were different contexts. Yeah, of course. But in our case, it was really very similar, and there were fathers and mothers in these two contexts. So something to think about. I want to say, marriage is your name? Marriage. I'm sorry. I was very touched by the personal participation that Arij offered us, and I think it's something which is, really, it was very, very important for me to hear it, because I think that there is a process here, and I'm thinking about now the Arab community. Something is going on there, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's in Israel, maybe it's in other places, but I believe that there are really good-hearted people here, and I hope so that good researchers as well, that like, to make a promotion or to go forward in this issue. And for your story is an excellent example of a process. I thought about, even a case study that you can write about and tell about your, elder child, middle child, the young one. Did you, and to, to tell it about the Arab community and other communities as well. This is one point. And another thing I want to say to Suzanne, that I think your point is really very important. I keep telling myself all the time, go to other genres, not only to narrative. But still, I agree with Rebecca that the issue of narrative in young children gives them a lot. And I know that you think about it as well. And it's not, it's going cognitive and affective ways. And we know that. So it's really an issue of development and supporting the child and giving, good skills from the beginning that will be, furthermore. But I do agree with you. And you gave us an excellent example from your research of informative, vocabulary support and combine it with narrative, etc., which we can follow and think about it in different cultures, languages, etc. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm glad that we've come to these large questions. We'll have a chance to elaborate on them in the next session, but first we'll have a short coffee break.